Here I'm going to be checking the operation of the fuel pump, which this is the fuel pump right here. I'm going to be checking the operation of the fuel pump and the pressure regulator. And this is the pressure regulator, this little piece right here. Now the original setup is this is the original fuel line. It's a quick connect. Squeeze the side and unplug it on both sides. That's the line, and it sits like so. This end right here sits on the fuel rail and it snaps right in. This other end sits on the fuel pump, snaps right in just like that. So to take it off, squeeze these two tabs, unplug, reach around under here, do the same thing for the rail, unplug, and this whole line comes out. Now there's a kit that you could actually buy. It's a coupler, and instead of disconnecting it from the fuel rail, you just disconnect it from the pump and you plug the piece into it, connect the other end to the pump, and it's like a T, and you put your gauge on it. When I checked that out, it's about $100 and something for it. So I'm actually just gonna make my own. And what I did, I went to the auto parts store and I got me a fuel line, same size, and this is it right here. Got me a fuel line with some clamps, and I connected it to the fuel rail. After I took off the quick connect from the original line, I just slid this on the fuel rail, and this end is gonna go to a T, and the other end is gonna go to the fuel pump. And I'll set that up and show what it looks like. So far pretty much I connected. I'm using maybe a 4-inch piece of hose with a T fitting, and this is just a brass T fitting. I got this from AutoZone. Everything ran me maybe about, including clamps and maybe 2 feet of hose, $10 maybe. So I connected one end of the hose to the fuel pump, the other end is on the T fitting. I clamp them in. Now I take this other line, the other end of this line is on the fuel rail under there. I'm going to take this end, and the hoses, you could make them as long or short as you want. I just didn't want to cut too much off. I'm just kind of using it how I have it. And this end goes on the other side of the T fitting, and then I'm going to slide the clamp up. I'm going to tighten the clamp so it's going to look like this. So the fuel pump is going to pump the fuel down the line all the way through, and like I said, this could be shorter, this could be longer, so you could bring it away from the bike, but it's going to pump the fuel from the pump down through this line all the way down and go into the fuel rail. This end is what's gonna have my gauge. That's gonna tell me the amount of pressure that the pump is putting out. So this is the end result. I got the gauge, I got the line from the filter, I got the line from the fuel pump coming through, going down, and the pressure is also going to go in here, and I'll be able to read the pressure. So I'll put that aside. Now I just have to take this hose off. And by the way, the other end of this line that goes to the fuel rail, I've already put a clamp on it and snug it up. And these clamps are so small, they're not designed to take a lot of torque, so you just want to snug it up, and that's it. Now I have the setup complete. I have my vacuum line right here. I just put a clamp on it. It was a little bit too big, but I put a clamp on it. And this is the vacuum line, and it goes to my vacuum pump, that style pump. And of course my fuel pressure gauge, and everything is connected. Fuel pump up in here, come through the hose. This hose goes to the fuel rail over here, and the T fitting goes to the gauge. And then on the fuel pressure regulator, which is right here, I have the vacuum line goes from that, and it goes to my vacuum pump. And what the manual states is that you should start the engine, well, put the tank back together first actually. So I'm gonna reconnect the hoses that were on the tank, drop it back down, and from there I'll start the engine. Now that everything is set and connected, I have the tank sitting down. The next step is to start the motorcycle, and I'm gonna watch the gauge for the fuel pump. Actually, the fuel pressure should measure around 40.4. So once I put vacuum in it, I shouldn't exceed 29.9 INGH, I believe it is, which is inch of mercury, which is the measurement of vacuum. And another thing is, once the bike is running and I'm watching the fuel pressure, when I increase the vacuum, the fuel pressure should drop. When I decrease the vacuum, the fuel pressure should increase. So just figure I'd explain that before I started and go ahead with the testing. I have some rags stuffed in there just in case there's some kind of leakage, if one of the clamps are not tight enough. My garage door is open. The bike is sitting right at the entrance of the garage. The garage door is open. Make sure you're in a well ventilated area. Also, I got a fire extinguisher handy, which is one of those multi-use fire extinguishers. Chemicals and all that kind of stuff is good for. So you just want to make sure you're overly safe than, you know, not being prepared. So from here I'm going to start it. We're going to watch the gauge. I'm going to increase the vacuum. When I increase the vacuum, the gauge should go down. And when I decrease the vacuum, which is this button right here, if I press it to release vacuum, then the fuel should go up. And I just got to squeeze the trigger to add vacuum. And that's it. Squeeze the trigger, add vacuum. Decrease, just press on the bottom to release. And I just put the ignition on and the gauge went up. So I'm going to start it. Gauge went up to about 45 psi, drop back down. So let's start it. Try that again. So you saw when I increased the vacuum and it got closer to like 25. Once I start increase it in general, the fuel pressure dropped, and then when I decreased it, the fuel pressure went back up. So according to the service manual, that's telling me that my fuel pump and my pressure regulator are working fine. So I could eliminate that as the cause of what just happened, of the bike running for a few seconds and then shutting off. So now I could move on to something else and try to see if I could figure what's really causing this problem.